Welcome to the CloudPod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonthan,
Ryan,
and Matthew.
Episode 232, recorded for the week of October 18th, 2023. The CloudPod is tired of talking about new instance types. Hey, Ryan.
Hey there. The astute listeners may have noticed that Justin isn't here with us today.
Yeah. No, Matt. But last week was just an episode with those two guys, so there's no real infighting. We do plan on getting back together at some point.
Yeah. We can do like what was the Twilight thing, the team vampire, team werewolf, or whatever. Vote for your favorite. Yeah, no, don't do that.
For your favorite pair, yeah. I kind of like the episodes with just the two of us, either me and you or me and Justin, or I haven't done one with just Matt yet, but like they have a different kind of feel to them.
Yeah.
More chatty. And anyway, all right, so we got not a whole lot of news today, but we'll start off with some general news. Why AMD's upcoming chips won't be the savior AI startups are hoping for. And this was a blog post around the new Instinct MI300A chips, which have been touted as an alternative to Nvidia's H100. People are claiming that it's not easy to use those chips. The startup tweeted about using the new AMD chips that it's been working on for a few years and said that most startups who would want to switch would have to throw out their own code and start from scratch. I'm not entirely sure about that. I mean, Nvidia does have a 20-year head start on Cuda. It's kind of the industry go-to. It's like the Nescafe of coffees, or the the Teslas of electric cars. It's just what people think of when they want to use AI. But AMD's new chip does have some advantages. It combines CPUs and the GPUs on the same die with a fabric connecting the two and shared memory, which is super efficient and super low power. And Nvidia does plan on doing the same thing, so obviously they're on the right track. I kind of wish they get together and figure something out that works for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's interesting how complex these have become, right? When it used to just be sort of you had optimized at like the computer level and maybe at the OS level, but now the workloads are so specific because they're so demanding, and then power is also very challenging. So it's kind of neat. I'm kind of glad I don't have to deal with it much.
Yeah, and I think PyTorch is the go-to right now for training large language models, and that's been working with Cuda for years. And I'm sure decent AMD support will get built in to support this new hardware. And so I think if you're using abstractions like PyTorch in the work you do with AI, then it's not going to end up being much harder to use AMD or Nvidia. But they are behind in some aspects. I think they're kind of ahead of the game with putting all this stuff on a single die. Which NVIDIA haven't been doing yet, but they're way behind the game on things like support for Int 8 and Int 4, which NVIDIA's had support for years. So they're all kind of tending to the same place, I think. But I'm kind of excited to see the performance of this new chip.
All right. Next, Amazon will use Microsoft 365 cloud productivity tools in a $1 billion mega deal. Amazon has reported he committed $1 billion to use M365 cloud productivity, which is for over 1 million of its corporate and frontline workers. It's pretty crazy. Amazon is upgrading from their traditional Microsoft Office software and to the cloud productivity suite, probably because Microsoft stopped supporting it, would be my guess. And it notes that Amazon had was reluctant to upgrade previously, which it's interesting. I think normally wouldn't report on like an internal business dealing, but it's one of those things. It's so the cloud relationship with these companies is so complex. Like it's kind of interesting how you have to use your competitor software for certain aspects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they haven't worked on their own Office suite. They could have taken some open source thing and made it their own, I guess.
I imagine if like Work Docs and their email offering had any traction, they probably would have done that. But it's, I imagine it's one of those things where if they can pay Microsoft, $1 billion, or they could spend $2 billion to build their own. like, and it's like, nah. And then people are just going to complain, right? No matter which one you pick, it's going to not have what you want or not have the flexibility. So,
yeah, I'm not surprised they didn't go with Google.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's really the two choices, right? Like there's smaller little homegrown stuff, or there's G Suite, which is now Workspaces, I think, or Office M365. So,
yeah, I wonder what the hesitancy was in upgrading. I mean, really, I guess the primary difference is just local apps running on the machine versus cloud apps. Maybe it's like data concerns, or
it's a lot, right? Like if you think about all those documents, all those emails, is now going to be residing on essentially Azure systems, right? And so it's like, are they worried about corporate espionage? Are they worried about data privacy? And I get the concern. It would be very interesting to see if something came out of that, because it'd be hard to detect and hard to enforce.
Yeah, some irony in Amazon complaining that other people have data that they could use against them.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, on to AWS news in general. Announcing the ability to enable AWS Systems Manager by default for all EC2 instances in an organization. You can now enable Systems Manager and configure permissions for all EC2 instances in an org that's being configured with AWS organizations with a single action using default host management configuration. The feature provides a method to help customers ensure core Systems Manager capabilities such as Patch Manager, Session Manager, and Inventory are available for all new and existing instances. Default host management configuration is recommended for all EC2 customers and offers a simple, scalable process to standardize the availability of System Manager tools.
Oh, thank heavens. This is one of those things, if you're, offering the cloud service the rest of your business, you want this to be a checkbox instead of, trying to do organization cloud stacks to make sure this is enabled in every different sub account and everything you're doing. It's much nicer to manage it this way. And I love these features where they're making that configurable down to the specific, components of the service. Like the inventory, for instance, it's a powerful one that, in previous lives, like I had left off, right? Because I was worried about costs and doing all these things. But then when you get a 0-day vulnerability and you want to run, some sort of reporting to see what you got out there, if you have something like this that's ubiquitous, sort of gathering this in the background, you have that data set to leverage, and it makes your response so much easier. So I'm a big proponent of having these things turned on by default and then maintaining that data set appropriately. You don't need to keep it forever.
Yeah, I know Google has Patch Manager and some of those other supporting things, but I really miss working with AWS and having Systems Manager, especially the agent for remote scripts. It's so useful.
Yeah, it really is. Like the interface was clunky, and I had definite complaints, but now that I don't have access to it at all, using primarily GCP, I miss it terribly. Almost enough to deploy my own service.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
CloudWatch launches out-of-the-box alarm recommendations for AWS services. CloudWatch, it's providing alarm recommendations and alarm configurations for key vendor metrics, along with the ability to download pre-filled infrastructure as code templates for these alarms. Hooray! It initially supports 19 services and will expand from there. This is cool.
That's cool. Not a single mention of AI either, which is probably driving this on.
I bet you're right. That's funny. Well, I mean, do you need AI? I bet you, those 19 services, there's probably millions of configurations in CloudWatch for the same thing. Slightly different names for variables and alarms, but otherwise they're exactly the same, because there's so many things that are so consistent across managing, when these services, if you think about compute, you're always going to have sort of alarms for thresholds for CPU utilization or usage of your on-demand or CPU demand credits for the T-series. So many of these things are just sort of like table stakes a lot. So it's really nice to see that they have these easier to implement.
Yeah, like how you can download infrastructure as code to build these things too. It reminds me a lot of the Google console, where you can, any action you can perform in the UI, you can get a copy of either the command line or some infrastructure as code to achieve the same thing, which is great.
It's really nice, and it really helps. That's the one thing I go to the UI for, is for if I don't understand how a service is constructed, right, or orchestrated. Like, you go through and the UIs that they presented in a human readable thing, and then but it doesn't scale. So having that cake and eat it too is pretty fantastic. I love it. I love that this is becoming more and more popular.
Are you a big user of Cloud Shell or not so much?
No, I find I don't use Cloud Shell, mostly because I like my local environment, and I haven't really put in the work to sort of merge the two. You can, I just haven't. And so like I have a development container that I have leveraging all of my stuff on a local workstation.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it's more of the fuddy-duddy in me than anything else, new tricks. It doesn't, but I would say that there's an actual need for it, so I'd rather there be a Cloud Shell, even if I don't use it.
Yeah. It's pretty useful sometimes. Introducing Recover into Existing Instance for AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery. You can now recover into existing instances instead of spinning up new EC2 instances with AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery. That's a bit of a mouthful. DRS minimizes downtime and data loss with fast, reliable recovery of on-prem and cloud-based applications using AWS services. Recovering into an existing instance allows you to retain metadata and security parameters. Yeah,
I mean, just the IP reuse alone is a huge advantage for this, right? Like, you really had to, if you automate it right, it's not that big of a deal to swap out the things, but not everything's easily automatable into an auto-scaling group or something that's, more elastic. And so this is pretty fantastic for those like dinosaur workloads where you're like, you want they're important, right? They're probably making the most money in your company, but it's also like, I don't want to make all the application changes that would be required to make it scale.
So it's interesting that you could use this not only for disaster recovery, but also as a really good migration tool as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. And so many things are being triggered by those metadata, right? We think about, just network access policies and IAM permissions, based off of the tags and those things. And so like, it's really nice that you can get all that, because those are all the sort of unknown rough edges of your DR. Like, the data's there, the application's functional, but I can't log into it because it's missing a thing, and it's like, oh yeah, it's just, so the more automation, the more you can sort of reuse that existing construct, which is virtual, and no reason why you really can't. It's great.
Yeah, I can't remember. Didn't they buy somebody, or was it Google who bought somebody a couple of years ago, which basically is this?
They've all bought someone.
Yeah.
DR, yeah.
Yeah, block-based replication. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. New customization capability in Amazon Code Whisperer generates even better suggestions. Now in preview. So Code Whisperer is a coding companion similar to GitHub Copilot or Google Duet AI. While these tools can help, they lack context of your private code repositories. I mean, except for if you grant GitHub Copilot all the access in the world. And the limitation presents challenges for developers learning to use internal libraries and then avoiding security problems of like internal common code. To address this issue, Code Whisperer customization, it enables organization to customize to generate specific code recommendations from private code repositories. With this features, developers who are part of a professional tier, can now receive real-time code recommendations that include their internal libraries, APIs, packages, classes, and methods.
That's nice. Fine-tuning the model for your own existing sort of ecosystem is that's really cool.
Yeah, you don't have to retrain the entire model using your internal data in order to get the proper responses, right? That's a pain. That's not going to scale. And so having the AI be able to make recommendations, but then feeding it this customization capabilities on top of that is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the day when it doesn't just generate code for you, but it tells you what you could be doing better.
Test of the earthquake warning system.
Wow, first earthquake interruption for a podcast recording. That's kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think what I'd like to see eventually is, I mean, right now, all the coding tools do what you tell them to do. And the more accurately you can tell them, the better you can write stories for it, the better the code they generate. And I still think we should work on this little challenge where we each use one of these tools to try and achieve a goal. I'm kind of excited to have a play around with that. But I think what would be cool is you point one of these tools at your repo and don't give it any instructions around writing a specific piece of code, but like, how could I optimize this, or what features would be better, or what could I do better? Like having it start to think at more of the architectural level than the actual coding level, because I think a lot of that would roll down to be better code in the end anyway.
Yeah. And it's difficult for an AI, right? Because those recommendations are awesome, but it requires so much context. And that's why, you have your more senior lead, engineers not really contributing code anymore, right? They're largely, those are where the conversations are going. They're just looking at this going, hey, I got an idea. Why don't you do this? Right. And so it's, it speaks to the concern of like, once we have junior engineers relying solely on AI, who's going to be the senior engineers one day. But, like hopefully we can adapt. And I think we will. We typically do.
Yeah.
And so like, but it's, it being able to feed this data in, being able to tweak it, it's making it really a tool that empowers that. It's not just a AI experiment to money grab type thing.
Yeah. I kind of like the analogy that AI could almost be its own operating system in a way. I mean, you kind of go back to the beginning of computers and people were programming in assembly language or machine code, and then
or punch cards. Yeah,
right.
I mean, yeah.
then higher level languages came along. We got the C's of the world and things like this, and then all the people who used to do assembly language, like, oh well, you don't understand how the machine works. How can you possibly write good code? And now when C gets better, and we got Python and Rust, and we got all kinds of different languages, and I kind of wonder if the new language of programming will be a sort of a different language entirely, where we sort of communicate the intent and what we want, rather than writing code. What place does code have if you can achieve the same goal a different way?
Right. And it's, it's funny because we sort of poo-pooed no code solutions for so long, but it's sort of because it missed that sort of element of being able to sort of infer context and add itself to it, right? You had to drag and drop your little boxes, and you had to give it every action. And then quickly, with any no code solution I've ever tried, I found that I don't have access to do the thing that I want to do the thing in the right environment for the thing. And it's, but if you can make that, achievable by using AI to infer a lot of context and place things where it needs to be placed, and really understand the requirements, especially during execution time, like that's huge, right? And so it won't even be a language in the way that we're familiar with coding languages, right? It's going to be just almost a new interface, like the difference between text files and an IDE. Like it's going to be something that I don't think we can even imagine right now. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think all the QA people have been harping on about unit tests for years will have their heyday now, because really, if you think about it, if a unit test defines what a system should be doing in terms of inputs and outputs, then all you should have to write is the unit tests, and then sort of pass that to the AI and say, write me the code that makes all these things pass.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and so I've been playing around with the inverse, because that's a common developer woe, is that you write all the code and then you're like, oh yeah, test, I'll totally do that. I will not do that, as it turns out. But I've been experimenting with having AI write the unit tests.
Yep.
And it really helps the development, because it'll write the unit test and be like, oh no, and, you'll change the code based on that unit test, because the unit test it generates, it's wrong. But it's not really its fault. It's sort of, it's finding stuff that I would, my code will work in a happy path, but in a failure mode, it would not. So it's actually working really well that way for me.
That's cool. I mean, when I've used ChatGPT to write Python modules, I've had it write unit tests to test itself, and obviously there's some human verification that goes into that. But it's nice to spit out some kind of custom dictionary module or something, which I've used recently. and then also have it write the tests and build those in. And yeah.
It's funny because it's helping me in ways I wasn't predicting, right? It's helping me become a better engineering manager and a better communicator of features, and because you give it to the computer and it does exactly what you tell it to. You can't get mad at it. Then and then it's like, okay, I gotta give better requirements. I gotta ask better questions. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. It's kind of exciting times, really. Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice. Okay, on to GCP. The 2023 State of DevOps report says that culture is everything. Just bear in mind that Justin wrote the notes for this. And caveat, I may or may not agree with some or all or any of what he says, but this year's report has some very fascinating insights. Justin was underwhelmed with last year's report, I think primarily because there was a lot of discussion about organizational culture rather than the tech side of things. But this year's research explored key outcomes and capabilities that contribute to sort of achievement. One is organizational performance. The organization should produce not only revenue, but value for customers as well as for extended community. I feel like these should all be kind of no-brainers in a way. Team performance, the ability for an application or service team to create value, innovate, and collaborate. Employee well-being. There are strategies that an organization or teams can adopt that are beneficial to reduce burnout, foster a satisfying job experience, and increase people's ability to produce valuable outputs. That would be productivity. With really two outcomes as a result of the above. So software delivery performance, teams can safely, quickly, and efficiently change their technology systems and operational performance. The service provides a reliable experience for its users. One of the more interesting additions this year is the focus on performance outcomes based on types of team, and it broke down into four types. User-centric, this type of team focuses on most of the user needs. Feature-driven, prioritizes on shipping features with a relentless focus on shipping, but that may distract from delivering on user needs. Developing is focusing on the need of app users, but still working on a product market fit or technical capabilities. And balanced team takes a sustainable approach between organizational performance, good team performance, and job satisfaction. So the net of the report is that culture and user focus are the keys to success for high-performing organizations.
It's one of those things, like I haven't read through the report in detail, but it's like, I do always kind of feel like when I read these, like there's a lot of like, well, duh, kind of reaction to it. And then, but then it's also sort of like, it is sort of tailored to feels like it's got a little agenda, a little bit more opinionated than I like.
Yeah.
But I agree with it in general, right? Like the way, I like structuring work, the way the companies and teams that I want to be a member of that have all these values, right? A lot of agency to those teams so they can self-manage and perform. They don't have to go through like 9 other teams and get acts of Congress to get their work done. It's a big part of that, of my well-being, literally my attitude and how much effort I want to put in. Because when I'm frustrated by, I have to go to another meeting or interface with another team just to do a thing, there's no satisfaction in that, right? It's difficult.
Yeah.
And so this is.
I write almost the same thing every year on my, sort of like personal self-review what motivates you? What can we do? What do we need to do to keep you working hard and that kind of thing? And my answer is almost invariably, as long as you give me the tools I need to do the job you're asking, I will happily crunch through work 40 hours a week or more, as the case may be. But if you don't give me the tools to be successful, then I'll be out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And both you and I have had that experience in other companies where that was the case, right? It was simple little things. And it was like, no, these aren't big things on their own, but through the day, there's no getting a task done anymore because of either a security policy or a review that needs to happen or some sort of workflow that needs to be triggered by someone else. And like, if I can't get that dopamine rush of actually doing a thing, I don't want to do this job anymore, right? Like I need that. We'll go watch TikTok videos.
I uninstalled TikTok.
Yeah, me too.
It became too much.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've been using Jira Plan recently, which I think kind of is a nice tool. It seems like a weird kind of bolt on in a way, the way it has to sort of go off and run as extra tasks to sort of go update all the tickets belonging to epics and things. But I do like it. It's been it's given me sort of a better overall view of the strategy and where I am in the project and what the other dependencies are, which I think has been lost in a sort of very flat ticketing system. So I'm really, really enjoying that as a tool right now. And I think it kind of gives, like, the reports that come out of it seem very tailored to be sort of waterfall-y like reports up to management. So they can get the data they always liked.
Yeah.
While people still pretend that they're doing agile. So
it really is the glue, right, between those two things. Like, because Jira is an agile tool, but it's used primarily for business waterfall tracking, project tracking. And so this is, I feel like Atlassian had to develop this in self-defense.
Yeah.
Because they kept getting feature requests largely from the management side of things for reporting and visibility of those things. And the users don't want to create a waterfall report or figure out all the dependency mappings for the next 6 months or whatever it would take, and so it's like, this is great. I'm happy for that gap to be filled for sure.
Yeah. I'm very, very, well, am I excited about it? I think excited is probably not the right word. I'm enjoying having the extra tool available. It makes it so easy to update, 10 stories at the same time or various things like that, which would otherwise be kind of slow.
And just to see it in context, right? You can get, like, through Jira boards, you can get a very specific, view into your team in sprint. But what your delivery is empowering is not something you can see until you get that larger view of it. So super cool.
Yep.
All right, getting back on track. Google mitigated the largest DDoS attack to date, peaking at above 398 million requests per second. Google is back with another massive DDoS attack, backed by Google's cybersecurity teams. It is 7.5 times larger than the largest in history attack the year before. This new DDoS attack reached a peak of 398 requests per second, as we said, and relied on a novel HTTP/2 rapid reset technique based on stream multiplexing that has affected multiple internet infrastructure companies. By contrast, last year's DDoS attack was 46 million requests per second, which I thought was crazy at the time. So now it's so nuts. These attacks started in August and are still continuing as of this publication, targeting large infrastructure providers, including Google. Google is able to mitigate the attack at the edge of Google's network, leveraging their investment in edge capacity to ensure that services and customers remain largely unaffected. And Google wants you to know that any enterprise or individual serving of an HTTP-based workload may be at risk from this attack. Web apps, services, and APIs on a server proxy may be able to communicate using the HTTP/2 protocol and be vulnerable. Nutso.
That is a lot of requests, and unusually, those how many million requests was it again? I forget the number was.
398 million.
That's a lot of requests, and I feel like we're kind of entering into the asymmetric warfare phase of DDoS now, because this HTTP2 rapid reset exploit is really asymmetric in that to attack a server requires very little resources on the client side anymore using this.
Mm-hmm.
So the vulnerability is I guess to explain like how we get to vulnerability, HTTP2 uses streams, so that previously web browsers before HTTP2 would have to open a separate connection to the web server, for parallel transfers, one per connection that was open. HTTP2 solved that by allowing multiplexing of data in a single TCP connection. And so it's like having multiple connections, but you only have to do the key exchange once and the handshake once, and now you've got access to multiple channels of communication within a single TCP connection. And what the rapid reset vulnerability is that a client's in full control of these streams. So the client can say, open a stream, I want this. Open a stream, I want this. And they can also say, reset the stream, I don't want it anymore. And usually servers are configured with a sensible number of concurrent streams per connection. Maybe it's 100. I think it may be 100 in Nginx by default, to stop people from abusing this and sort of spamming a server using a single connection. But what Rapid Reset does is lets a client open a request for a stream and then immediately close it. Open a request, immediately close it. So within the space of a few seconds, you can open and close these streams, which consume server resources, and they obviously take time to clean up on the server side. And so within a few seconds, you can open tens of thousands of streams and close them again at basically no cost to the client and immense cost to the server.
Wow. I mean, that used to be the way we would detect a lot of these vulnerabilities for botnet things. Just like, why is my computer running slow? And so being able to sort of avoid that level of detection is crazy. And so difficult, such an arms race.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about most of the sort of legacy tools would have looked at, well, how many connections is this particular client IP opening, and it would be very layer 3 and 4. And anyone who's still only using those tools instead of any kind of layer 7 inspection will be stuck with this because there's only one connection and it's not sending much data. It couldn't possibly be that being the culprit for this attack.
Yeah.
But the servers are on fire. What's going on?
Yeah. One guy. What's he doing? Yeah. No, it's crazy.
I'm not sure what fix they're proposing for this. I mean, I think putting some kind of controls in place that say, clients can only open and close, rate limiting the rate at which streams can be opened and closed will be the big one, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Google said they're able to mitigate the attack at the edge. And so it's like, are they inspecting like this traffic and sort of understanding the number of streams or the type of requests in the streams and being able to sort of null that? It's crazy. Or are they just like sucking it up?
I guess they could. I mean, at the proxy level, they could say, okay, client's opened a stream, but if it's closed again, they introduce a time delay, I guess. A client opens a stream, but if it's closed again within how many milliseconds, we'll discard it and not forward it to the server. And if they open it and send a request, then we'll forward it to the server. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, somebody's still doing work somewhere, but I guess the resources consumed at the WAF layer is probably significantly less than it would be on a server.
And, as a user, right, like that's not on the edge. Like, yeah, I'm not paying for that compute. I'm not paying for that. It's part of the service. It's built in. I mean, I'm paying for it through, my subscription to AppArmor or whatever, you have, but yeah.
It's pretty interesting vulnerability. I'm surprised it's taken such a long time for anyone to actually exploit it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, our final story from Google this week, Getting to Know Systems Insights, a simplified database system monitoring tool. Slow-running databases are hard to diagnose per Google product designers Mani HK and Kaushal Agrawal. Is our SQL saturated? What's consumer resources? What's changed in the database? It's always a change. Other background tasks like vacuum or backup operations running, and sometimes take some effort to diagnose, which is why Google have built Systems Insights, a database systems monitoring tool that brings together critical metrics, events, and logs to provide a comprehensive view of both the external database performance and the internal system resources, bringing all these signals into a single dashboard that allows you to quickly identify potential sources of problems without having to switch between tools. Single pane of glass, here we come. It's available for Postgres and Spanner, now in GA, and MySQL in preview. They built this due to the friction caused by having to look at metrics on the instance OHU page, as well as custom dashboards They intend to give you a snapshot of system status quickly with pre-built dashboards with actionable metrics.
Fantastic. Yeah, one of the biggest challenges for a lot of teams coming from Microsoft SQL Server using the Postgres is vacuum, right? Like it's all of a sudden, and it's not something they're used to dealing with. I don't know how it's handled in Microsoft SQL Server. I just know that this is a common complaint from teams that are making that transition, and they're like, this isn't performing. Why not? And so having the insight into that, to have the understanding of, it's an action you're not triggering. The engine itself is sort of maintaining its indexes, which it needs to do, or it would slow to a crawl. So it's great to just have that visibility, because once you know about it, right, you can tune it. And once you tune it, you can have it go to the right place, or you can do whatever you need to do, or right time rather.
Yep. Always good.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to Azure, which had almost no news. They had a tax story, which Jonthan and I declined because it's taxes. Sorry. And the one other thing that is of news is for all of you people still running Windows Server 2012 R2, it has reached the end of support. I know there's at least a few in my ecosystem, so no judgment. This can be hard.
Hi, my name is Ryan, and I still run SQL Server 2012.
Yeah, exactly. As of October 10th, 2023, Windows Server 2012 R2 has reached end of support. And you can avoid this, of course, by purchasing extended security updates enabled by Azure Arc. If you're on the Azure workloads, if you're not running in Azure, I think you are boned. Migrating to Azure for free extended security updates. Really? I didn't know that was an option. Or I guess that's the same thing. I'm confused. Probably should have read this one before reading it. But nah. Or modernize to one of its Microsoft Platform as a Service offering, including Azure SQL Managed Instance or Azure App Service, which I am always a big fan of, because running servers is something I don't like doing anymore. So yeah. PSA concluded. Even more rough.
2012. Yeah, so it's at least 11 years old this year. I think it probably came out in 2011. So I don't know. I still see people running Windows XP around the place. So,
well, I mean, it's hard. Like if it's working, right, don't touch it. And so like those are things. And then you do want to have support, and you do want to make sure that you're not vulnerable. And so once it reaches end support, it's not going to have any of those security updates. It's not going to do that. So it's like you have to have the forcing function. Microsoft can't fund the investment of engineering this till the end of time. And they do a pretty good job, I think, with the length of life and the amount of options for extension, because there are extensions you can do not being on the Azure platform. But I do think it is kind of clever for them to make that a feature of the Azure platform, as far as being a differentiator.
Yeah, I guess they have to make it available for money outside, but giving it away for free inside Azure that's...
Well, they're getting their money somewhere, right? Yeah. That's all they get.
I think the regulators will go after Microsoft for not making those security patches available outside Azure at all. So I guess making it paid is kind of checks that box. Yeah, I mean, I just think there's going to be fewer and fewer reasons not to maintain old code at this point now. You've got Code Whisperer and you've got other AI tools like go fix this bug in all these code bases. 10 seconds later, you've got the patches, you test them. What's, where's the need for engineering teams to do that? So I think perhaps there'll be less and less deprecation of old software if AI can keep it up to date.
Or just, it's, I think it's like anything. I think engineering teams will be moved to different things that aren't supported well by model constructs. And, and quite honestly, like, I don't like these tasks where I'm like, I need to update from 2012 to whatever the latest is. Like, it's not a fun task to go through and figure out the deltas of what I need to change, what's not to change, and then make changes, test changes. It's high iteration times. It's sort of thankless. And so I look forward for our new robot overlords doing this for me, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable that people leave it till the last minute. It's like, oh, we don't want to test the latest and greatest. It might have bugs that haven't been fixed yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it's 11 years later and you're still using the old version. And now it's a terrible emergency. And yes, indeed, there are problems that you need to resolve. And now you've got 3 weeks to do it instead of, 5 years.
And it's just so complex when you add in the layers of all the dependencies that you're running and all the differences they have there. Like, it's gross. I don't want it.
Yeah, no, I think we.
I don't want to be, vulnerable, but
yeah, I think we treated software like it was a piece of hardware in a way. You buy a car 70 years ago, and you can still put gas in it and start it, and it runs. But software doesn't work the same way.
Yeah,
it's we need.
Well, now cars don't work the same way either. You have to have software updates in your cars. So, yeah, the world moves on whether we want it to or not.
Yes, it does. All right. I think that was our last story for the week. So it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
And that is The Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.